So welcome to AANMC's webinar with Dr. Leila Turner. Today we're going to be talking business. One of the biggest questions we get at AANMC is, what do naturopathic doctors do? How do they practice? What do they make? How can I be successful? Can I pay off my student loans? If you've had any of these questions yourself, stay tuned. We are going to be talking about that today. Dr. Turner is a successful doc in Arizona, and I am very thankful to have her joining with us today to talk about the topics at hand. Next slide, please. So everyone here today is going to be in listen-only mode. If you do have any questions during the course of today's webinar, please use the Q&A function so that we can get your questions answered and keep track of it all. If you do have any issues, please email us at info@aanmc.org. Next slide. And just as a heads up, this webinar is not eligible for continuing education. It is educational only. And we hope that you enjoy today and have a great informative time. So with that, I'm going to turn over the event to Dr. Turner.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yanis. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Real quick, a little bit about me. I grew up in Northern California, went to University of California in Santa Cruz. Go Banana Slugs for the funniest. We win the funniest mascot of the country award. And then I checked out all of the naturopathic schools. I fell in love with the Arizona area and decided to come out here for naturopathic school. So I was here for school, and then I graduated with my doctorate, and then I completed 2 years of residency at the time it was called Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine. Now we had a name change last year because we have university status now. We offer more than one program. So now it's called Sonoran University of Health Sciences. And I did my residency there. And then I did two things. I started a private practice in another doctor's office, and I also became adjunct professor at the school. And I'll talk a little bit about this later when we talk about the journey that you choose, but I really did that intentionally because I needed a job to have income while I was building my private practice. And I did that for years. And then my job at the college morphed a little bit while I was still building my private practice. And then in I graduated in 2007. Then I decided to open my own medical center in 2016. So from 2007 to 2016, I was working in another doctor's office. And then in 2016, I jumped off the cliff and wanted to start my own practice. And so I'll talk to you about that part of my journey. And I founded my now medical center, Living Wellness Medical Center. So diving right in, these were some of the questions that I've heard over the years, and I felt that these would be the ones that would help you guys the most in terms of thinking of where you are now. A big question is, will you know enough when you graduate? So we'll go over that. Can I make a living as an MD? What type of job options are there? And what is my therapeutic approach? This is a little bit more about the art of naturopathic medicine, but I wanted to share it because a lot of people are still needing some clarification on what is naturopathic medicine and what is it that we do. What are the stages of therapeutic care and some important traits of a successful doctor? So will you know enough when you graduate? This is a loaded question because I feel like I never stop learning. And I think the better question is, do you know enough to get to the next step is really the better question. When you graduate, you really have the clinical skills and you're learning to ride the bike, being a clinician. And then you also have the business skills. And then there's also financial skills. And so what were some of my strengths when I graduated? I think my biggest strength when I graduated is that I was super curious and I was super driven. And I think that those two traits, I'm jumping to my last slide, but those two traits, I think, are the traits that really have set me up for success. And I have continued to be super curious. Even now, 18 years into practice, I'm still researching and I'm learning new treatments and I'm bringing new things on because medicine changes and social media changes, and our patients come in with questions that I need to kind of help guide their decision making with. And how did I go about filling these holes? The most important thing here is having mentors to ask for help and learn along the way. I have never stopped asking questions. And so when I graduated, I did know enough to take the next step. I was successful in my residency. I was successful with the patients that I helped. And then I was successful in getting a job. And I was successful in starting a practice. When I first started practicing, there's lots of different avenues that you can take for marketing your business. And I found what worked best for me was to do free public speaking events for people in the community. I went to libraries and did talks. I paired up with a restaurant that at the time was all about serving food to people with food sensitivities, which 20 years ago, people, if you had a gluten sensitivity or a dairy sensitivity, you were the weird one at the table. And now we have so many gluten-free options. The options are delicious and there's many of them. So I used my public speaking spark as a way to educate and connect with potential patients. And that was a really successful way for me to help build my practice. So I did know what I needed to know to answer this question is, do you know enough when you graduate to start? I knew enough that I could be a TA for the other students and help teach them with their physical exams. And then I started my own shift. So this question, will you know enough? This is hands down, yes, absolutely. I have no doubt that as long as through your journey, through the medical school curriculum and through your clinical training, as long as you're curious and you're engaged and you're doing your homework and you're learning from your mistakes and you're learning from your experiences and your cases, you're going to know enough. Many of my friends, we have all succeeded at all of the different steps along the way. So yes, you will know enough. Next big question. Can you make a living as a naturopathic doctor? Can you make a good living? Can I pay my expenses? Can I pay myself, my student loans, and save for retirement? This is a big question because what does it mean to make a good living? What will your expenses be in the beginning versus later? Excuse me one sec while I just change my view a tiny bit so I can see my notes. There we go. So can you make a living as a naturopathic doctor? So the short answer is yes, because I have, and many of my friends have, my colleagues have, and many of my students have. I've seen this now over and over and over, success stories, people opening their own clinics, and people really following their dreams and doing what they want. So absolutely. However, my advice to you and the perspective I want to share with you is that you really have to match where you are in your professional chapter with what your goals are. I am making more now in practice than I was when I was 2 years out. So you have to understand where are you in the journey and then make sure that your goals are realistic. And, working with some sort of a business coach or a financial advisor or even a CPA, working with your tax person will help you understand what your goals are as your financial position changes over the years. So I wanted to just walk through kind of where these positions are. So in medical school, this is the crawl, right? This is the 4 years of grueling medical school. This is the books. This is you need to understand your medical conditions A to Z. And the answer is usually a multiple choice question and a Scantron. And you need to understand what's the answer that the question writer was looking for. Basically, you're learning how not to kill people in medical school. You're learning what not to do and what are the most commonly followed protocols. So in the beginning, that's all you're focusing on. You're not focusing on retirement. You're not focusing on paying off your student loans yet. Then you graduate and you move into that first thing where all of a sudden you're walking, you're practicing medicine. I call it supervised practicing because in the beginning, you're usually you're usually asking lots of questions. You're hoping someone is maybe looking over your shoulder and watching what you're doing. So this is where you're learning how to practice. And you're practicing. I always love this phrase that medical practice is because we're practicing our practice, right? This is when you're learning to trust your knowledge. In medical school, you're just drinking from a fire hydrant. There's not a lot of trusting yet because everything you've seen work is all within the cloud of medical school. And your focus is very much on passing every test, passing every class, passing all of your milestone exams. So once you start practicing, now you're focusing on trusting the medicine and trusting the knowledge. At this point, you don't have a lot of expenses. You're minimizing your expenses because you're not making a lot of money yet. You're probably not paying off much on your student loans, and you're probably not thinking about retirement. I graduated from medical school when I was 27. I was not thinking about these things at all. I was just thinking about what job do I want? Where am I going to be? Is it where I want to practice medicine? And will I be doing what I want to be doing? So then a few years later here, you move into where you might be starting to set up a team. And at this point, you've been working as a doctor for a while. You have some years under your belt. You're a little bit more comfortable with the medicine. I highly recommend that you meet with a financial advisor early on so that they can help you start to understand what your financial growth will look like, your path and savings. You can also meet with a student loan advisor, and you can do that while you're in medical school so that you have a plan there. I really found setting up my team was important. One financial pearl I wanted to share with you is this concept called the Profit First bookkeeping system. This is a system that I didn't implement in my practice until way later, and I would recommend people implement this at the very, very beginning. So I will show you that. And then this concept I have here, mapping your money into buckets. If you really want to map out your money, you can map out how much you're making and where the revenue is coming from, and even which type of revenue stream is it coming from? How many new patients are you seeing, and what's the revenue stream from that? Follow-up patients, how much revenue are you getting from follow-ups? What type of revenue are you getting from procedures? What type of revenue are you getting from medicinary sales? And you can look at all of your different revenue streams. And each one of those, if you try to focus on how to increasing those sales, how to optimize those sales, then you end up making more money. You just do. If you figure out how can I advertise that I do acupuncture, how do I advertise that I do naturopathic manipulation of the spine, then you're able to focus your marketing efforts on those different revenue streams. And then I will map out my money into where it goes into my personal life. And so when I was a new doctor and I was beginning to make money, I wasn't thinking about mapping my money. I was just paying my bills, making sure I was paying them, and hoping the money was coming in. I wasn't looking at this system as a system that I actually had control over. And now I've really learned that you have some control over the system if you're aware of what the system looks like. So at this point in practice, you're probably going to start paying off your loans. You might even be starting to put a little bit into retirement. And this is where you really become a doctor. Now, depending on how quickly you grow your practice, there's this balance between you doing and you starting to outsource. And there will be a critical point where you can only see so many people in the day if you're still doing your own administration. And at some point, you're going to need to hire staff. And that will be sooner or later, depending on how quickly you're building the practice. But at this point in your career, I still think of this as kind of you're still in investing mode. Now, it's possible that you will take a different journey and you will want to become an employee right away. This journey I'm showing you here is a little bit more of the entrepreneur journey. And we'll talk about the job types in one of the next questions. But at this point, you're still investing in kind of the building of your business. So I mentioned I wanted to share with you this concept of the Profit First bookkeeping system. And so I wanted to explain what this does. So what this bookkeeping system does, and this would be for anyone. If you already have your own business, I highly recommend you learn about this. There's a book called Profit First. And the concept is, I'm hoping you can see my mouse here as I am moving it around on the screen. So the income that you get from your business goes in, okay, perfect, thank you. The income you get from your business goes into a checking account. And my checking account is called revenue, and I name the accounts. Every single week or every single month, I will look at how much money is in this income account, and I will put a percentage of it into my 4 other bank accounts. Yes, I have 6 bank accounts, and that's just for the one business. So each week or month, depending on when I'm doing my allocations, I will transfer a percentage. This profit account is usually only between 1% and 3%. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage that goes in, and you kind of don't even notice it. Owner pay, this is how much I pay myself. Tax savings, so for every dollar I make, I am saving a percentage for tax. And then the largest percentage goes into operating expenses. The tax savings goes into my tax savings account, and I do not touch that money. It is not mine, and I hold on to it until I do a quarterly evaluation of everything, and then that's when I decide how much I'm going to pay for my quarterly taxes. But I save that money right off the top when I make it, and it literally goes into its own bank account, so I don't see it. I don't touch it. And then the owner pay account is a percentage that I saved, and I use that money to pay myself. So it's called the profit first system because the concept is that you're putting a tiny bit into profit. And over time, more and more will build up here in this profit account. And what happens with that profit account is a percentage of it you can choose to take as an owner draw, and you give yourself a bonus. Or you can take a percentage of it and you can put it back into operating expenses if you want to reinvest in the business. Say you want to buy a piece of machinery for the business, or you want to buy an ozone machine for the business, or whatever you're wanting to reinvest in the business. This profit is a little bit like a building the business pearl, and you can also draw from that and give yourself a bonus at the end of the year. But the point here, the final point about this profit first system that I think is the most important, is this operating expense account. That is the account that I look at when I go to make decisions about buying things for the business. I don't look at how much money is sitting in the income account because that's not all my money. I only look at the operating expense account. So when you move forward as a business owner, whether you have a business with a lot of people or you are your only business, because once you are a physician and you're practicing, even if you're a one-person thing, that's still a business. The operating expense is really the amount of money that you have to buy your supplies and to pay your employees, minus yourself, because yourself should also get paid, because otherwise the system does not work. And this operating expense account is what dictates your decisions. So this ends up being a mindset tool for you to understand what can I afford for the business to do. So I highly recommend you check out this book. It was one of the pivotal points for me in my entrepreneurial growth and journey, is the profit first system. And I would start using it as soon as you start a business. So then you're going to move along your journey. You know, you're potentially you're probably a good 8 years out now, but now you're starting to feel like a doctor. The medical part is now like, it's easier. You know what you're doing. And this is also where you start to feel profits. You start to actually have the profit where you're either giving yourself bonuses, going into retirement, family vacation, paying off student loans in bigger chunks, or you are reinvesting some of that back into the business if you have a plan or a project with the business. For example, hiring another doctor and maybe bringing another doctor on board. Say you now have enough patients that you need help. And if you had another doctor, there's the potential that you could have them be an employee and help you with your overflow. You have enough flow of new patients, and they can then help you keep the machine running and help you be profitable. There's all sorts of different ways of tracking your profitability. And I highly recommend that you get good at tracking your profitability. There's the concept of whatever you track or whatever you focus on your attention, it grows. If you're constantly thinking about how can I increase new patients? How can I increase new patients? Then your brain is going to be thinking about other ways to increase new patients. And then you'll go out and you put time and energy into those marketing streams that's going to help you bring in more new patients, and more new patients come in. So where you put your attention and where you put your time and your focus, that is going to be where you're going to see your biggest growth. So I highly recommend tracking. At this point in your career, your skills become more valuable and you become more of a strategist. You become a more efficient doctor. You become more effective in making your treatment sheets. My new patient visits used to be 90 minutes, and I loved having the 90 minutes. It was very comfortable and there was plenty of time to talk about everything. But over the years, my time maxed out and then my income maxed out because I couldn't see any more patients. And if I wanted to make any more money, I got to a point where you have to decide you either need to increase your prices or you shorten some of your visits. I can now do my new patient visits in an hour, and I easily still get done everything that I was getting done in the 90 minutes. And now I have multiple 30-minute slots open that now become more profitable slots. So now that I'm better at strategizing with patients, I can whip through things more quickly. I recognize patterns with patients more quickly. I recognize deficiencies, and I recognize weakened areas in their body that we need to focus on to help with. So when that point happens, you now have become a more valuable doctor. And that's when you need to increase your prices. You know, a lot of students will ask me, how do you know when it's time to increase your prices? And there's different answers to that, but one is when you're booking out a month, it's probably time to increase your prices. So next we move into, now it's time to fly and soar, right? So this is now when you are busy enough that you really need help. You're hiring out, meaning this was when I was like, why am I writing the newsletter for our medical center? Why am I the highest revenue generating doctor in the office? Why am I the one working on newsletter things? What else could I be doing with my time that's more valuable or more profitable for the business? And how much would I have to pay someone to do this where I'm paying them a small percentage of what I could be making with my time otherwise? And so now you're thinking like an entrepreneur and you're thinking like a business owner. A book I highly recommend is called Who Not How. This isn't going to pertain to you when you are in medical school, because when you're in medical school, I know you're going to need to be in the trenches learning everything. But the Who Not How concept is a fabulous book. This is when profits become more meaningful because now you actually have enough profit that you can do bigger things with it. Pay it forward. This is when I have students come and shadow me in my office and they can see how I run the office. They can watch me do clinical care with patients. I hire and train other doctors. It was about 7 years ago that I got to the point where I was so busy in practice, I was booked out, that I needed help. And so I decided to bring on a resident program at my office. All of the schools have their own residency program, and then each school is kind of a home base for the residency sites, and different clinics in the cities have their own residencies. So I am an affiliated site with Sonoran University as a residency site, and the students can come and shadow me, but I also have a job there where a resident comes and works for me. And she helps me with my patients, and she also has all of her own patients. So understanding this flow, that I think is really important when we're answering the question of, will I be a successful doctor? Will I be a successful physician? I think an important question here is, at what stage are you in your entrepreneurial journey? And what are your goals for each of those chapters? Because as long as your goals are realistic and you're conscious with where you are in your entrepreneurial journey, I am sure that many of you will be very successful in following your dreams and meeting those challenges and those goals. So next question, what type of job you want? What type of job do you want? So there's so many opportunities for naturopathic doctors. You can be an employee working for someone else. You could get involved in academia if you wanted to be a professor at one of the universities. You could be an associate doctor or a contract doctor. Those are kind of the same name. And I'll go through in a moment the main differences between employees and contract doctors. And then you could obviously be a business owner or an entrepreneur. I always knew I wanted to have my own clinic. But when I started, I did not want to learn how to invoice people or how to deal with payroll or how to deal with taxes. I didn't want to do any of the business stuff. When I graduated, I just wanted to learn how to be a doctor and I wanted to get really good at it. So I focused those first 7 years on just learning the medicine and becoming a skilled and efficient and proficient and effective and authentic doctor with my patients. So everyone will design their journey as they see fit for themselves. After I felt like I had a good bit of skill under my belt, then I wanted to venture into the entrepreneur world where I actually owned my own business. So I started as a contract doctor, and then later I really became a business owner and an entrepreneur. Other opportunities could be research. You could work for a nutraceutical company. I think what's important here is knowing yourself and knowing what personality, what type of dynamic do you want? And the other part of this is you need to know how these job positions differ, which just means you need to do your homework. And part of that is doing the research, and part of it is also talking to other people. The majority of what I've learned has been from me asking other people questions. So really being clear on how the jobs differ and then knowing yourself, and then you will be able to fit yourself into whatever position you then know you fit well with. The freedom is going to be different with each of these. Obviously, if you're an employee, you're probably going to be required to be there for a certain number of hours. From my resident employee is required to be there from 8 o'clock until 5 o'clock, Monday through Thursday, and then Friday we have shorter days. So those hours are expected of her. Medical liability. As an employee, your employer will have the expenses of covering a lot of your medical expenses, like your insurance and things like that. They'll cover things like advertising, whereas if you are an independent contractor, then you're going to be paying for your own advertising. An employee, you get benefits. Benefits is wonderful. There are 401k opportunities, insurance opportunities, and understanding how those differ. Understand how they differ at the beginning so that you can pick which situation you feel like works best. W-2, this would be if you're an employee, and a 1099 would be if you were a contractor in one of those offices. Now, as you progress through your entrepreneurial journey, you will want to learn about taxes, whether you're an employee or whether you're a contractor. As an employee, you don't have a lot of tax saving strategy opportunities. You get a W-2, you pay your payroll taxes, and your employer splits those with you. But other than that, you don't have can't take deductions, things like that. Whereas if you are a contractor, there's way more tax saving opportunities. And I highly recommend that you add to your team potentially immediately when you graduate, or I would even recommend in like your 4th year of medical school, is that you meet with a tax strategist and talk to them about what type of business you're wanting to set up so that you understand these different situations. So here is a quick overview between the difference between an employee and a contractor. So an independent contractor means the payer has the right to control or direct the results of their work, not what will be done and how it will be done. So the independent contractor, they're in charge of their job. They basically decide everything about their job. Whereas an employee, the employer is in charge. The employer is in charge, and the employer can dictate what they do. The employer can literally tell them what to do. Whereas a contractor, whoever that contractor works for, they can't tell them what to do or how to do it. Here for your reference, I'm not going to go through these in detail, but I just wanted to point out how the taxes differ here. As a W-2, you cannot deduct business expenses. You're going to pay your taxes and you don't have much control over how those might change. Whereas if you're a contractor, you're paying your own taxes. You can deduct your business expense, and you can navigate a way that I think you're going to probably have more freedom, but also more responsibility. So moving into the next question, what is my approach to implementing the naturopathic philosophy? So I know that there's probably been other AANMC presentations on the naturopathic philosophy, because this is like the root and the juice of who we are and what we do. And this is why I love my job, are these principles. So I wanted to just show you a few pictures showing you what the philosophy is. A huge thing we focus on is we focus on treating the root causes. This is a list of, I would say, the most common root causes. We've all now probably heard of inflammation. This is big on social media. There's a number of products and supplements that we've heard of as being anti-inflammatory, but many of our chronic diseases are based on inflammation. The microbiome is the universe of bacteria that live in our gut. Oxidative damage is kind of our aging process, blood sugar issues, nutritional deficiencies, hormonal imbalances. This is the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, and ovary, and then the thyroid. So all of those hormones, which hormones are my playground. I absolutely love the whole endocrine system. We also have another association called the Endocrine Association of Naturopathic Physicians, and they're a wealth of information too. So if you are moving into the world of naturopathic medicine and you're interested in hormones, they are a wonderful reference. Immune function, emotional component on people's health, toxicity accumulation. I put in here purpose deficiency. I can't tell you how many times I'm treating people with just depression or anxiety, and we start talking about their goals in life or their purpose, and they have there's like a lack of direction or a lack of purpose. And so we talk about that. And I usually will also encourage them to seek out counseling or to work with a life coach to help them kind of refine that. But this affects our physiology. It very much does. Epigenetics, this is genetics. And then I love this one, is nature deficiency. I sure know when I don't have enough connection with nature, you feel your physiology change it. Systems check. So, when we are assessing for root causes, we're also wanting to look through the list of the systems that our body should be functioning at optimal function, and all these different systems. We've got our upper digestion, liver, gallbladder, small intestine, large intestine. Are our minerals in the levels they should be? Vitamins, amino acids, neurotransmitters, essential fatty acids, sugar metabolism. This is big right now. I know social media is big, talking all about the continuous glucose monitors, which are allowing people to become more well educated about how their diet is affecting their sugar. So this is a component of health. Pituitary is hormone, thyroid, adrenal is hormone, cardiovascular, the kidney, bladder, immune, sympathetic, inflammation, and the circadian rhythm. So all of these systems in our body, I'm constantly assessing and making sure that they're working optimally. Precipitating triggers. This is a little bit like a root cause, but oftentimes in naturopathic medicine, we're looking for everything was going well in this person's life until something happened. And sometimes if you can identify what that something was, then you can actually dig in and start to help with reversing the damage and restoring function. So was there a trauma or a loss? Antibiotics I throw in there just as a very specific but very valuable common cause. I cannot tell you how many times I've had people come in with gut issues. They've had gut issues for 9 months, and we trace it back, and they had a sinus infection in May. They were given an antibiotic, and since then their gut has been messed up, and they've had frequent colds and flus. So the value of a longer visit with our patients. And my new patient visit is still it's still 60 minutes. So we still have plenty of time to talk through the timeline and dig into when did things go awry? And antibiotics are a common one. And then the obvious changes too, like, did they move? Did they change a job? Did they change homes? Did something big change at home? These are our naturopathic principles. Docere, which is one of my favorite. This is the concept that doctor also means teacher. And so I'm continually teaching with my patients. Tole totem is treat the whole person. Tole causum is treat the cause. Premium non nocere is preventative medicine. Vis medicatrix naturae is treating the innate vital force that our body has to heal. Our body knows how to heal. If you cut yourself and sit there and watch it for a week, it heals. Our body knows how to heal. It's just there's usually obstacles or stressors or deficiencies affecting our body's ability to heal itself. And then lastly is prevention. This is something called the therapeutic order, and this is also part of our philosophy that we use when we are putting together a treatment plan with a patient. But I always start at the top. I always start with therapeutic lifestyle changes. So what are the diet changes that this person needs? What are the exercise changes, the lifestyle changes, maybe the habit changes that need to happen? What are the things that we can do to stimulate their vital force? And this might be that they need more sleep. This might be that that some acupuncture would benefit their vitality and help their body heal. Supporting the structural integrity. This is the physical body. So things like naturopathic manipulation and acupuncture, supporting the affected body systems. This here is, I'm going to go back a couple of slides. Whenever we are assessing for weakened body systems, these are the systems we are assessing for. And we look at these to make sure that things are functioning properly. And if they're not, then we support them. So for example, a common system that I see under functioning are the adrenal glands. The adrenals are the glands that help the body deal with stress. They make our hormone cortisol, which you've probably heard of. So when stress is an issue, then we're supporting that weakened body systems. And then this last one here, addressing the pathology, this is when I will be more aggressive with my treatments and use things like medications and sometimes surgery. Sometimes patients need surgery, and that's when I am referring and integrating with other providers. Moving on to question 5. So what are the stages of care in a successful business, and what do I want? What are the stages of care in a successful naturopathic business? So the stages of care, when a patient first comes in to see you, you have to evaluate if they're in an acute situation that you need to get them out of. If they're not having an acute flare-up of, say, a chronic condition, they're just coming to you with their chronic condition, then you don't need to deal with the acute. You go right into dealing with kind of their chronic condition. But then I explained to them that there's kind of phases of what we're doing. The first phase is where we are restoring optimal function. And this is where I focus on getting them to feel better as quickly as possible. And this is when I might need to use more aggressive treatments. Like, say they come in and I discover they have hypothyroid. I'm probably going to recommend that we give them some thyroid medication at the beginning to help them start feeling better as quickly as possible, because it's going to be very hard for them to work on reversing the dietary and habitual habits that got them into this state in the first place if they feel really, really crappy. So the beginning is restoring optimal function. And then I explain to them, after we get you feeling better, we're really going to focus on reversing the underlying chronic problem. So reversal of chronic disease. And then the last stage is about preventing regression, preventing that disease from coming back. So when someone comes to me with diabetes, I explain, right now, we're going to get you feeling better as quickly as we can. And then I'm going to need you to be more on board with making dietary changes so that we can reverse the underlying physiological problem. Many times I've had patients come in and we reverse diabetes. You can reverse diabetes. They reverse it, and then I have to educate them and make sure they understand we have to continue to keep it gone. Because otherwise, if you go back to the original diet you were doing before, the diabetes is just going to come back. So in the beginning, I'm explaining to them, we're going to have to check in more frequently. We're going to have to be more aggressive, probably more committed. There's probably going to be more supplements. We're going to have to do labs more frequently. We're going to have to probably invest more time, energy, and money into the reversal of this condition. But once we get you out of this, then we can move into more of a maintenance phase. And when you teach them this then gets them to become a patient for life. Most of my patients I have now been treating for 10 plus years. And it's because now I only see them maybe twice a year, where we're checking in and making sure the diabetes hasn't come back. Versus I've also had patients where they saw me, I helped them reverse their diabetes, they thought it was fixed, and then they left. And then years later, I've had them come back and go, we need to do it again. And clearly I didn't do a good job of preventing the disease to come back. But educating them about this will get them, you're not just giving them a pill and saying, take 2 and call me in the morning and you'll be good to go. You're educating them that this is really a lifelong journey. This is not just a fix-it pill prescription. And although this is part of our naturopathic philosophy, this is also invaluable in the financial success of your business, because it's way more expensive from a marketing perspective for you to go out and try and generate more new patients than it is to just keep the patients that already know, like, and trust you. So this concept is huge because it will help with your clinical success, but also your business success. So lastly, what are the 3 most important traits of a successful doctor? So I have to start with hunger. I have always been curious, but you've got to want it. Through medical school, you are inhaling from a fire hydrant of information. And when you graduate, you will probably land either in the independent contractor entrepreneur field, or you'll probably land in the employee field. And both of them are wonderful options and they both have benefits. But in order to really grow with both of them, whether you're building your business or whether you're building your practice, you have to be curious and you have to want it. This is not like a 9-to-5 job or a 9-to-4 job that I show up at and then I leave it. I am constantly thinking about ways to build it and things to do. So I would say that an important trait is to be hungry for success and to want it. Another really important trait is to be organized. And part of this is technologically organized, which I have so many tools I use for organization. I teach it, I coach it with my students. But if you don't feel like you're good at organization, then I recommend you get someone to help you where you at least set up some of your systems. Very quickly, I'll mention one other pearl. I use a database called Evernote, and it's a relatively cheap software, but I use it to save all of my clinical pearls. So anytime I come across even an email from say I consulted with the doctor about a case, I'll save the conversation in my Evernote, and then I title it Crohn's disease consult with Dr. Jennifer. And so that way I can find that note. And that is one of my ways of organizing my clinical pearls, because especially nowadays, we are bombarded with information. And never mind the organizational skills you'll need with running a business, but you'll need to be organized. So if this isn't a skill you already feel like you have, find a way to refine that skill. And then the last trait I will mention is connect with your community, connect and network, ask questions. When you graduate, you're going to want to make sure that you've got some physicians that are willing to be a mentor for you. I mentor students. I have them shadow me. I coach them. And you will need someone to kind of bounce cases off of and walk things through. And often when I have students that consult with me on a case, they're on the right track. They're 78% of the way there in their thinking. But having me agree with their thought process, it solidifies their brain and it solidifies what they think they know, and then they run with it. And those consults, I think it really helps you hit the ground running. But you have to network and have relationships with those people, and connecting with your community. Even things like finding jobs, that's how a lot of the jobs are found is, did you know that so-and-so is looking for a new doctor? Here you go. So hopefully this was helpful and important, and hopefully this was helpful and informative. Do we have any questions?
There are questions that have come in. I will triage a few for you right now. So one is, actually, before we go to questions, can you just go to the next events slide so we can just share that briefly? There we go. So thank you. I hope that all of you have had an informative time today. If you found this valuable, we have 2 upcoming events. Next month, we will be talking about functional medicine. And then in September, we will have a panel of current students talking about their experiences and answering questions. So if any of this is valuable, happy to have you at any of our future events. And all of our events are also recorded, and we will send the recordings out afterwards. So you can go to, back to the contact page in case folks want to reach out. There you go. Thank you. So some of the questions that have come in, one was in regard to just in general, how do you attract and retain your patients in practice as a naturopathic doctor? I know some folks focus on specific populations and some folks have more general types of practices, but can you speak to that, please?
Absolutely. Well, how I attract patients now is very, very different than how I attracted them 18 years ago. So I'm going to answer the question 18 years ago. Now it's by referral. But 18 years ago, I primarily was able to attract most of my patients by doing public speaking events. I would find a library and offer to come and do a talk on IBS. And I would give a presentation on IBS, and they would help me market the event, which was incredibly valuable. If you can find someone to co-host the event with you, then when you are marketing the event, they're helping you get attendees to come. So I would go to Barnes and Nobles and give a presentation on IBS. And if I could get in front of a group of people for 30 minutes and talk to them about my experience with IBS, my understanding of their suffering, and would let them ask questions that would convey my experience, I would also offer a free 10-minute phone consult in my office. And every time I did a public speaking event, I would get between 3 and 5 new patients. Now, part of that was probably, I feel like I'm a fairly good connector with the audience. I cannot see any of you. I wish I could, but connecting with your audience is going to make them more interested in working with you. So if that means then you need to go get some public speaking training or something where you feel like you can connect better with your audience, you want to convey your experience with their suffering, and you want to explain that you've worked with people that have dealt with this before and you have some treatments that work. Now, as a new doctor, it was harder for me to do that because I didn't have 18 years of experience. I had 1 year of experience. And so it was harder for me to say, I know what you've got going and I know I can help. But the thing is that I did know enough to help them. Even as a brand new doctor, I did. I knew way more about all of these natural treatments that would potentially help them than they did. And I think that's one of the biggest things for a new doctor is that you want to practice your confidence. Confidence is also a muscle. So the more engaged in school you are, the more confident you will be in that presentation. Now, there's other ways to market. I'm just speaking to that one. There was a second part to your question, Dr. Yanez, that I had. It was marketing.
Actually, I'm going to tack on just an additional answer to that. So
Sure.
there are practices that focus on specific patient populations. And understanding the pain points of that patient population is called market analysis. That is, especially if you are trying to be targeted in your marketing to a specific patient population and understand recruitment and retention of your patients, understanding that population is going to be very important in structuring your marketing materials, where you market to people, when you market to people, all of that as far as the funnel of getting your patients into your practice. And that's called market analysis. It can be as basic as doing some web searches or as complicated as hiring a firm specifically for that. So, there are a lot of ways of targeting things. It really just depends on how sophisticated you want to get. And like Dr. Turner said, where you are in your journey. You may not do that as a starting out doctor. That may be something that you grow into as your practice evolves.
To add to that
So
too, oh, sorry.
go for it.
I was also just going to say there's advantages and disadvantages to niching your practice where you say, I only treat menopause. The advantage is that you get good at menopause quickly because you're only doing it. But the disadvantage is that people think that you don't then also treat hypertension. And so there's advantages and disadvantages to that. And that could be a whole nother talk because I said I specialized in women's health. That means I treat 51% of the population. So it was a narrow enough niche that women felt connected to me, but broad enough that they understood that I also treat hypertension and IBS, even though I specialize in menopause. So.
Thank you so much. There is a question about structuring telemedicine businesses. I know there are doctors who have telemedicine as part of their practice, and there are doctors who solely practice in a telemedicine structure. Would you be able to speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah, I am aware of all of the different ways that people have it set up, but the one that I have the most experience in it is mine. So I'll share my experience. My practice is a brick and mortar. I have a business, I have a location, we have a office. I'm going to say 30% of our visits are phone. During COVID, obviously 89% of those visits were phone. Sometimes we will do video if we need to see the person, but otherwise we just do video. You do need to make sure that your malpractice insurance covers virtual care. And depending on what state you practice in, you also need to make sure if you're practicing in a state that's licensing you as a primary care physician and you're prescribing things for these people, you have to see them in office at least once per year. So I have a number of patients that I only see once per year in office, and we do virtual the rest of the year. I have a couple of patients that live out of the state, but I have to see them in office, in person, once per year if I'm going to continue prescribing for them.
Thank you. We have time for just a little bit more here because we are going to wrap up in a bit. Can you speak to starting up a practice? What does it require? What's needed? And I know you spoke about different models of starting as an associate in an existing practice versus starting on your own.
So if you're wanting to start, there's so many pieces to that. First, you need to pick a business name with the Corporation Commission of your state. So in Arizona, that's the Arizona Corporation Commission. Once you pick your name, I filed it as an LLC to best protect the business. Then you apply for an EIN number. Once you have an EIN number, you can go to the bank and you get a bank account. You now have a business. Then you need to look at all of the different categories of the business. There's going to be a marketing plan. There's going to be an operations plan of how are you going to run the front desk and what software are you going to use? Are you going to, there's so much there. That could be a whole conversation or a whole class. Is there a deep part of that question? I mean, the beginning is that, what I said. And then it's just about breaking down the different categories. And I would say there's a financial projection, a marketing projection, an office operations, how the office is going to run. And then there's also the medical operations, like how are you going to do your charting and how are you going to get your medical supplies? And then I would also throw another category in there, which is how do you be a CEO of your business, plan time for reflection, do your financial analysis, analyze your numbers, and strategically plan the path of your business. So you don't just want to be in the business, you want to look out at the business from the outside and plan the business as a growing entity. So there is a lot there. And I've worked with a number of coaches over the year, and I highly recommend finding a coach.
Thank you so much. So we are going to have to wrap up today so that Dr. Turner can get to her next appointment, as well as myself. But we so thank you all for coming today to this event, and I hope that this was helpful for you all and provided maybe a little bit of information that you didn't know coming in. So thank you so very much for joining, and thank you, Dr. Turner, for sharing your 18 plus years of lived and learned experiences. And I hope to see you all at a future event. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, everyone.